Hello and happy Thursday. Thank you all for joining us today. I am here with Kaitlin Goodsell. She is one of our ROI Inner Circle members, and she is based out of Washington. How are you doing today, Kaitlin?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You had a good Memorial Day weekend, right? Your birthday was last weekend?
Yeah, 24.
That's so exciting. Happy belated birthday. So how old were you when you first got started into real estate? I'd love to learn more about your background and just introduce everyone to you and see how far you've come along on your journey.
Yeah, so I've been in the real estate industry since I was 17. I bought my first house at 19. It was the cheapest house on the market, cheapest house money could buy, and lived there for a few months and then kind of realized that I wanted to move back home, go back to school, do the typical early 20s thing. And so I Airbnb'd that house for a year and then put a tenant in it. So kind of just became an investor by default. Realized, I was not putting a lot of effort in, and I was able to kind of float the mortgage on that. And I was like, why don't I do this in a way where I can actually put money in my pocket every month and wake up on the first day of the month with more money in my pocket than I went to sleep with. So
That's awesome. So since you occupied your first rental, does that mean you were able to get a first-time home buyer's minimum down for that
yeah, it
then?
cost me $2,000 to buy that place. The purchase price was $87,600, and so I did a 0% down loan, and so that $2,000 was just closing costs and kind of getting my foot in the door. So
That's incredible. And do you still have that property?
I actually just sold it last year. So kind of to keep going. So beginning 2020, I decided I wanted to get into this, take it seriously. I knew that, I had the influence of my parents and grandparents' knowledge, but I wanted to expand because I didn't have the 20% down on a house here. That's, the average price point was about 500,000. I didn't have I didn't have the kind of income or savings or help to save up $100,000. So I knew I needed to go out of state. So I just started learning, and even though I started with an investment group that was local, and they were helpful as far as leading me to Addicted to ROI, but I didn't learn there what I needed to be able to invest out of state. So joined Inner Circle in 2020 and just kind of started reflecting personally of what do I need to do to make this happen for myself and to make this goal turn it into a reality. And so I set a savings goal of 25,000. I had a job and was making good money, but I had never seen that much money in a bank account. And so it was one of those things that it was intimidating, but that first step for me was to save that much money and see that in my bank account. So yeah, I just cut some expenses, started, a side hustle, and I was just putting everything away. I was also a licensed real estate agent, so I committed that, every penny I made off of my sales was going to go in that savings account. So yeah, I started that January 2020, and then end of July 2020, I had a commission check that bumped me into that like 25,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so then I joined Inner Circle earlier that year, and that really just helped me. Jen was sending deals, every day, every other day. And so I would literally be like, oh my gosh, I want Starbucks. And then I would like check my email or check Facebook, and I would be like, oh my gosh, no, I have to keep saving for this goal. And so really just every penny counted, and building the habits to save a lot of my money. That was really that first 6 months of 2020 was super good for me for instilling habits that allowed me as a first time investor to save $25,000. And so, yeah, I had that money and I had a goal of 12% cash on cash return. I didn't really understand cap rate. I didn't really understand all these other numbers. I had to look up what, CapEx was. So I just kind of kept going for it. And I understood cash on cash return. And so that's the number I stuck with, 12%. And I committed as soon as the deal came through that $25,000 would cover that I would reach out to the agent. I didn't want to waste any agent's time because I've had my time wasted. And so I committed once I had the money and could make an offer, I would reach out to the agent and make an offer. And so that was actually on a condo in South Carolina. And
So you were investing in South Carolina while living in Washington.
yes. And I called the agent. I'm like, hey, I've never done this before. You've got, a newbie here, and he helped me a bunch. But unfortunately, that property had an offer accepted on it. So I was like, well, shoot, I still have to go for it. So I put in a backup offer. I didn't really want to rely on that though, because I know backup offers don't always go through. And so I kept looking, and another one came in Wisconsin. It was 110,000, so I knew I was probably going to need some extra down payment, but I knew I had the habits where that was going to be easy. It wasn't like, oh, how am I going to come up with this extra $3,000? It was like, oh, I'll just, I already have this I'm saving every month, and I can put this on a credit card so I could pay it off after I close. And so, yeah, so then backed out of my backup offer and got the place in Wisconsin. And that one, after I talked to Corey and kind of kept running numbers, it was at about 14% return, which was amazing because, everyone says stocks and real estate in general is about 6%. So I was like, oh, great, I'm doing double that. And so, yeah. And then also in that same time, I was done doing Airbnb on my cabin, my first house, and I put a tenant in there full time. So then he was paying off that mortgage, and then I was predicted on the duplex that I only needed one unit rented to cover the mortgage. So out of my 3 units, I had one that was basically going to be pure cash flow. So that was what
That's
I liked
awesome.
multifamily too, and not doing a single family home, was then someone could not be there and it could still be paying for itself. Because I saw my parents do that. They had trouble renting theirs out, and then they were having to pay the full mortgage. They didn't have anyone helping out. So
yeah, the power of multifamily.
Yeah, and then last year, my first house, the tenant was his lease was up the end of May, and he reached out and he was like, hey, I love living here. You've been a great landlord. I became a landlord in the middle of COVID when I knew I wasn't going to be able to kick this guy out if he could afford to pay the rent. And he was amazing. And, it was very emotional to think about selling my first house because I bought it so young, and it had really taught me a lot about investing and stuff. But he loved it so much. He was a great tenant. And there was just this sort of peace with handing it over to someone that was going to love it more than me, who was just using it to learn. So I sold that to him, called Corey up. I said, hey, I'm selling my first house. Find me another rental. And so
I used a 1031.
Yeah, so I did a 1031 exchange on that. I made about $45,000 after I owned it for 3 years. So I took that $45,000 and then bought a triplex in Milwaukee. So 5 doors in a year was crazy, and then during that time, I was just trying to get back to my saving habits because I knew I wanted to buy more properties, but I kind of loosened up after I got the first property. So kind of had to tighten back up, put some bills back on the credit cards, commit to, okay, after this closes, I have to pay that back. And so that one, it was predicted at about 22% cash on cash, but after owning it almost a year, next month will be a year, it's looking more like 16%, which is still,
yeah, still super awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have 5 doors now?
Yes. Yeah. So
what are your goals?
My initial goal, so even once I bought that first property when I was 19, I was like, okay, I want 10 doors by 30. And kind of, as I've been able to kind of speed it up by buying in lower priced areas, I think I'll be able to beat that. I was thinking more like 20 or 30 doors by 30. I think 30 by 30, it just sounds better.
Yeah, that would be so awesome. Gotta reach for the stars.
Yeah, plotting how to exponentially grow that. So
yeah, well, you've gotten to 5 in less than 2 years, and you're just turned 24. You've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
How do you feel like joining the inner circle has helped you reach those goals?
Yeah, so like I said, just the constant in your face about it, constantly being invited to different workshops and events, stuff like this, where you can be inspired. That really kept it front of mind. You can inquire on Zillow and talk to an agent once, and they might call you back once a month, but that really doesn't keep you engaged like Inner Circle does, sending you deals every day. I was looking at $5 million 60-unit places, and I knew that that was not in the realm of what I wanted to buy, but I would still look at the deal to be like, oh my gosh, like I could get to that point where I'm putting, $500,000 down on a place and it's going to pay me $4,000 a month, like just crazy like that. So it definitely helped me stay engaged, and really just being able to hear everyone's stories is really cool too, because it shows you that you can take what you learn, but your story isn't going to be like everyone else. You're not going to be able to fully copy what everyone else is doing. And it's really like your path to take and your goals to set and your journey to follow. So,
Yeah, it's really inspiring being around everyone else. But like you said, it is your own journey. You have to push yourself and craft your own story.
yeah.
What fears do you have with investing? Because you mentioned that your parents had and grandparents had invested before, but they were only investing in state, right?
Yeah. So my grandma, who is also my CPA, she owned 21 doors in North Everett, where I live now. And she had a lot of graph about me investing out of state. She had all these stories, all these horror stories about all these people she had done her taxes for, and they finally went to visit their property and the deck was falling off and all these stories. And so kind of working through those, because I could have followed in their path and invested here, but it would have taken me much longer. So I had this story explained to me. Basically, when someone asks me, why do you buy out of state? I say, well, do you own stocks? And usually people do. And I was like, well, have you been to the headquarters and met the CEO? Have you looked at like a lot of people think things are safe that aren't. And so you just kind of have to choose your risk. And for me, investing out of state is worth the risk because I was able to get in the door sooner.
That's awesome. And do you think that without being in the inner circle that you would have been able to find these properties or scale so quickly?
I think I would have eventually been able to do it, but I think having just that go-to of the inner circle was nice. I mean, I could call Jen and be like, "Whoa, what is going on?" And I could have done that with an agent, but only in the area where I would have decided to buy. And so it's nice to have like a countrywide support system, and being able to kind of look at different states and look at different markets and then decide accordingly. So yeah.
What is your favorite part of being in the inner circle?
I love the deals. Daily, or it's usually at least 3-4 times a week. The deals, just being able to look at them and be like, wow, when I first started in 2020, the returns in in Tennessee were a lot higher, and then as it's gotten really popular over there, I've seen them kind of shrink, but it's still a really growing market. And just when you stick with it and you consistently look at the deals, it's really cool to see how markets have changed around the country. Because being in real estate, I know how the market has changed in Seattle, but watching it in Tennessee and Florida and Texas, all of the big markets that I get the deals in, I really like doing that.
It's also really cool to see just the opportunity available, because you
Right.
might only be used to the higher price deals within your market if you're living in Washington, but then being able to see, oh, I could afford a multifamily. It's
Yeah,
not out of the realm of possibility.
exactly. Yeah.
What's something you would say to someone who feels like they're on the fence or stuck with fear analysis paralysis?
Yeah. So I've paralyzed myself multiple times analyzing different moves in my life, and I would just say, set a goal and don't negotiate. Don't go back and say, well, da, 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 da. Don't negotiate with yourself. If you set a goal and something falls in your lap that meets that, just go for it. I mean, I think another thing is you have to think about the worst that could happen. I would say it was also a fear of mine was, oh my gosh, what happens if I lose my job and can't pay the mortgages and there's no one in the rentals, and oh my gosh. And it's like, well, what would happen? There's even, if you have to walk away from your property because the worst of the worst of the worst happens, then you just get back on Inner Circle and you get on call with Jen and you go, I need some creative financing ideas. So that's where the support of Addicted to ROI really helped with like the worst that could happen. So
And it's nice that within the membership there's different members. Like, not everyone is looking to be an active investor. Some might be wanting to get into private lending. So there are passive opportunities, other creative financing strategies that can be utilized.
Sure. Yeah.
And then let's end this on a fun question. What is your why?
So I think I'm probably the only person in the group with this why, but I want to have passive income to rescue horses. I grew up in the horse world, and I worked with a few different horse rescues and just realized there's still a big need for saving horses from slaughter. There's basically a pipeline. Horse slaughter is illegal in the U.S., but it's legal in Canada and Mexico, and so there's basically a pipeline that goes either to Canada or to Mexico. And my goal is to have enough rentals to pay me to end that pipeline and end that, just end the horse slaughter.
That's awesome. Would you still want to be working at that point and just have that be a side thing, or would you want to be able to focus on horses?
I'd love to be able to focus on horses, and that's kind of they're expensive money and time wise. And so I kind of realized early on that I needed some sort of life hack to be able to do that and do it successfully and really put my heart into it. And so that's where investing has helped that, and kind of it's been able to allow me to even kind of dream bigger with that.
Yeah, it's incredible that you've been able to scale to 5 units in less than 2 years, and that the inner circle has helped you gain access to the connections to make that happen and also help you dream bigger. I know your original goal was 5 or 10 units by 30, but hopefully we can get you to 30 by 30.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you again so much for your time today, Kaitlin. I really appreciate having you on and having members like you within the community. It's such an inspiration for myself as a first-time investor to hear from stories like your own, and I can't wait to see what we can do for you.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Happy belated birthday, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Kaitlin is part of the Inner Circle, so if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll see you there.
Bye.
Bye.